So you can use objects to restore related information, and there's the symbol .to primitive function that you can create that allows objects to be converted to string or number. You can use objects as namespaces to organize your code, which a lot of coding has to deal with staying organized. If you're not organized, then your job just becomes that much harder. And in the future, I would love to be able to use the module pattern more regularly in our code. I don't think we're quite there just due to widespread browser support. And unfortunately, in corporate environment, sometimes we have older browsers, and so we can't use all the new good stuff. But if you're interested in using more of the new stuff, there are some build tools and things that you can do to try to get there. And I suspect that might be something that we talk about in another Discovering JavaScript episode. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Are there any questions or comments or anything kind of in the queue for this episode?
At the moment, we don't have questions, Tyson.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. If you review this video, because this will be made available, and you end up having some questions, or you would like to, provide any feedback, please feel free to send us an email. You can email me directly, tyson.jouglet@skillbuilders.com, or any one of the helpful people here at Skill Builders.
Just had one question, Tyson, before we finish, if that's not a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Came from Ellen, so thank you, Ellen. What's the advantage of script over regular PSQL with the Apex success and error messages?
So I think that if I'm understanding that question correctly, I think I'm just assuming I'm getting this right. Why am I using mputil.notify and oops? Why am I wrapping Apex APIs with my own utility? The reason for that is it's just one level of abstraction away from the underlying APIs. I do the same thing with sending email in projects. I don't like to directly call apexmail.send all over my application. I'm going to call Tyson Jouglet email package.send, and it's very likely that that's going to go ahead and call apexmail.send. But now I have my own central control point of how I'm going to handle my emails. And the best example of that is in between dev and production environments. When I'm in dev, I don't want to be spamming my users with email. I'm going to write it to a log table or maybe send it to the developer distribution list so the developers can see it. But when I'm in production, I don't want that to happen. I want that I want the email to actually go to the user. So it just gives us an ability to control how we interact with those APIs.
Perfect. And I think also so what's in general advantage of using JavaScript in approach versus just using a standard PSQL? Like you had a button where you can submit using PSQL, and then you had...
Sure, yeah. Absolutely. PL/SQL is the standard render and submit sequence. So you have to render the entire page and process the entire page. And in some cases, that's really great because you get to leverage all of the fantastic code that the Apex team has put together for computations and validations and processes and branching and all that good stuff. Sometimes you don't want to use all of that. You want a smaller request and response just to do one little interaction with the server. Just be mindful that when you choose to not use the standard submit, you're throwing away all the baked-in validation. You're throwing away all the computations. You're throwing away a lot of things. So do not just think it's a free lunch, right? There are some trade-offs, and you have to think about, is this feature worth it or not?
And one more, Tyson, before we finish. Can you go a little bit more into Apex and Ajax X01 and parameters that go in, and then how it all works?
Yeah, sure thing. So one thing that you have to know about Apex is that any value that you want to send to the server, the Apex engine has to be able to put that value somewhere or just hold on to it temporarily. And that has to be a known location. And way in the early days of Apex, quite often we would just make items in our application and we would just call it Ajax empno or Ajax amount. And we would have to make those items. So anytime you had an application that wanted to use this utility, you had to go in and make these application items to hold these values. And the Apex team kind of quickly realized that that's just really annoying to have to do that. And those values are just temporary values that aren't really that important. So what they did is they went ahead and created generic items that are in every application, and they're Ajax X01 through X10. I believe it caps out at 10. And they're there, and they're just a core part of the framework, just like Apex App ID is a core part of the framework. So you know they're always going to be there in your Apex application, and you can refer to them to help write Ajax utilities. And so it's just a generic thing that's always there. And that's why it's extremely important. The very first thing that I did is I took app Ajax X01 and I assigned it to a named variable. So right away I know, this is supposed to be employee number, and okay, this is supposed to be amount. And then all the rest of my code uses amount and empno. It does not refer to these bind variables. And that's just a choice for clarity for future developers. And as a pro tip, there's two ways you can think about that. I like to think that the future developer is either one of my kids, and I'm trying to help them as much as possible and be successful in figuring out what this code does. If you don't like that analogy, you can go kind of more scary with it, and you can say, pretend that the next person to manage this code is a serial killer and they know where you live. And so you want to make that person as happy as possible. And so I do as many things as I can to try to help make the next developer happy with what they see.
All good,
right.
And we have one more. I'm not sure I get it, but I'll try to get it across. What about objects referenced in various versions in main.js, for example, that you, in Super Mario that you showed with imports and stuff?
I'm not quite sure what that question is, and we are kind of at the end of the hour. So if you want to, please send me an email, kind of with maybe elaborate a little bit more on that question, and I'll happily respond for you.
Sounds
with that
good.
being said, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we'll get these videos and source code made available on our website. And thank you so much for spending your time with us. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.